The United Nations, also known as the UN, is an international organization made up of 193 member states which was founded in 1945. The UN focuses on acting against humanitarian issues in the 21st century and aims to guide all its member states towards a safer future of peace and prosperity. This organization also helps governments to work hand in hand through dialogue and negotiation. If you'd like to find out more about the UN, I would recommend that you check out their website at www.un.org. In 2015, the UN set 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, to achieve globally by 2030. These SDGs aim to provide peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. Although these goals were described and elaborated into 17 parts, they are meant to work together and be focused on as a whole, since they all complement each other. To give you a quick insight on what the goals represent, I'm going to briefly introduce each one of them, as well as introduce a few of the targets they focus on. However, each one of these goals has been developed very carefully and very logically, so I definitely recommend that you go check out exactly what they stand for on the UN website. SDG number 1 is no poverty. This goal aims to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. 10% of the world's population still lives in extreme poverty today. Extreme poverty means that they live on less than $1.90 per day. Through this SDG, the UN wants to eradicate all extreme poverty and reduce by half the proportion of people living in poverty. SDG number 2 is zero hunger. Today, 135 million people still suffer from acute hunger and malnutrition. Through this SDG, the UN wants to end hunger by ensuring access to safe nutrition for all, as well as increase productivity by implementing resilient agricultural practices. SDG number 3 is good health and well-being. This goal aims to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Over 40% of all countries have less than 10 doctors per 10,000 people. Through this SDG, the UN wants to end preventable deaths of children under 5 and achieve universal health coverage. SDG number 4 is quality education. In 2018, 260 million children were not receiving a proper education. Through this SDG, the UN wants to ensure that all children receive free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education, as well as eliminate all gender disparities in education. SDG number 5 is gender equality. This goal aims to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Worldwide, 750 million women and girls were married before the age of 18. Through this SDG, the UN wants to end all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere, as well as eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. SDG number 6 is clean water and sanitation. This goal aims to ensure access to water and sanitation for all. 1 in 3 people don't have access to safe drinking water. Through this SDG, the UN wants to achieve access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all. They also want to substantially increase water use efficiency across all sectors. SDG number 7 is affordable and clean energy. This goal aims to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy. 13% of the global population still doesn't have access to modern electricity. Through this SDG, the UN wants to ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services, as well as to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. SDG number 8 is decent work and economic growth. This goal aims to promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth, employment, and decent work for all. In 2017, the global unemployment rate was 5.6%. Through this SDG, the UN wants to sustain per capita economic growth in accordance with national circumstances. They also want to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all. SDG number 9 is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. This goal aims to build resilient infrastructure, promote sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. 16% of the global population doesn't have access to mobile broadband networks. Through this SDG, the UN wants to develop quality, reliable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure. They also want to promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization. SDG number 10 is reduced inequalities. This goal aims to reduce inequality within and among countries. Worldwide, 10% of children live with a disability. Through this SDG, the UN wants to empower and promote the social, economic, and political inclusion of all, as well as ensure equal opportunities for all. SDG number 11 is sustainable cities and communities. This goal aims to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. 3.5 billion people live in cities today. Through this SDG, the UN wants to enhance inclusive and sustainable urbanization. They also want to provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems for all. SDG number 12 is responsible consumption and production. This goal aims to ensure sustainable production and consumption patterns. A third of the global food produced is wasted either by consumers, retailers, or during transportation and harvest. Through this SDG, the UN wants to achieve the sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources. They also want to substantially reduce the waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling and reuse. SDG number 13 is climate action. This goal aims to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. 1.07 million kilometers squared of ice is lost every decade since 1979. Through this SDG, the UN wants to integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies and planning. They also want to strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards in all countries. SDG number 14 is life below water. This goal aims to conserve and sustainably use the oceans, the seas, and marine resources. Over 3 billion people depend on marine and coastal biodiversity for their livelihoods. Through this SDG, the UN wants to prevent and significantly reduce marine pollutions of all kinds. They also want to prohibit certain forms of fishery subsidies that contribute to overcapacity and overfishing. SDG number 15 is life on land. This goal aims to sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. Today, around 1 million animal and plant species are threatened with extinction. Through this SDG, the UN wants to take urgent action to end poaching and trafficking of all protected species. They also want to integrate ecosystem and biodiversity values into national and local planning. SDG number 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions. This goal aims to promote just, peaceful, and inclusive societies. In 2019, the UN tracked 357 killings and 30 enforced disappearances of human rights defenders, journalists, and trade unionists in 47 countries. Through this SDG, the UN wants to substantially reduce corruption and bribery in all their forms and provide legal identity for all. SDG number 17 is Partnership for the Goals. This goal aims to revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. Today, the debt burden on developing countries remains at about 3% of export revenue. Through this SDG, the UN wants to mobilize additional financial resources for developing countries from multiple sources. They also want to enhance global macroeconomic stability. As I mentioned before, these goals should all work together because they're all interconnected. For example, SDG number 3, good health and well-being, depends on a country's access to clean water and sanitation, SDG number 6. SDG number 13, climate action, depends on the global efforts to increase responsible consumption and production, which is SDG number 12. These are just two examples, but there are many links that you can make between all the SDGs. It's very important that you're familiar with the SDGs because you will be using them in every aspect of the geography course. You'll be learning about them in case studies, you will use them to answer some questions, you might even be asked about some of them in some exam questions. That's all I'm going to be talking about for the SDGs, but if you want to find out more about them, I would definitely recommend that you check out the UN websites or even just ask your teacher.